of Rome and rise of feudalism. Imagine a world where the mightiest empire ever known crumbles into dust, where cities turn to ruins, where armies scatter like leaves in the wind. This isn't fantasy. This is the real story of how Rome fell and medieval Europe was born. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it didn't fall in one either. By 300 AD, cracks were showing in the empire's foundation. The mighty Roman army, once unbeatable, now relied on foreign mercenaries who cared more about gold than glory. The economy was in shambles. Roman coins, once pure silver, became worthless as emperors mixed in cheaper metals to save money. Imagine trying to buy bread with $1 that's worth less every day. That's what Romans faced. But Rome's problems went deeper than money. Corruption infected every level of government. Emperors were killed left and right. In just 50 years, over 20 emperors met violent ends. The empire was like a ship with too many captains, each trying to steer in a different direction. Then came the invasions. Germanic tribes, pushed by the fierce Huns from the east, poured across Rome's borders. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths. The Eternal City had fallen. Though the empire limped on, the final blow came in 476 AD, when the last Roman emperor, a teenager named Romulus Augustulus, was kicked off his throne by a Germanic warrior named Odoacer. But here's where our story gets interesting. When Rome fell, something new rose from its ashes: feudalism. Think of it as a pyramid of power. At the top sat kings and nobles. Below them were knights, the medieval world's professional warriors. At the bottom were peasants, the common folk who worked the land. This wasn't just about who was in charge. Feudalism was a whole way of life. Let's break it down. The manor system picture. A medieval manor. It's like a small town centered around a lord's castle or manor house. Fields stretch in every direction, worked by peasants who owe their lord labor and a share of their crops. The manor was self-sufficient, producing its own food, cloth, and basic goods. Think of it as medieval one-stop shopping. Life as a peasant. Being a medieval peasant wasn't exactly glamorous. You lived in a one-room house with a dirt floor and thatch roof. Your animals lived with you in winter. Instant heating system. You worked from sunrise to sunset, farming with basic tools. Most of your harvest went to your lord, leaving just enough to feed your family. If you were a serf, and most peasants were, you couldn't even leave the manor without permission. Knights and warfare. Now, knights weren't just guys in shiny armor. Becoming a knight was a lifelong journey. It started at age 7 as a page, learning basic skills and serving in a lord's household. By 14, you'd become a squire, training in combat and serving a full night. Finally, around 21, you'd earn your spurs and become a knight yourself. Knights lived by a code called chivalry. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about honor, courage, and protecting the weak. Think of it as a medieval superhero code of conduct. But make no mistake, medieval warfare was brutal. A knight's life was dangerous, and many died young in battle or tournament. Castle life. Medieval castles weren't just fancy houses. They were fortresses, symbols of power and centers of local government. Early castles were built of wood on hills. Later, stone castles evolved with features like moats, drawbridges, and arrow slits. A castle was like a small city, housing hundreds of people, from nobles and knights to servants and craftsmen. The church's role. The Catholic Church was everywhere in medieval life. Monasteries were centers of learning where monks preserved ancient knowledge by copying books by hand. Churches marked time with bells, organized festivals, and provided education. Bishops were powerful lords who controlled vast lands. The church was like a combination of school, hospital, government, and social services. Town and trade. As feudalism evolved, towns grew around castles and monasteries. Merchants and craftsmen organized into guilds, medieval labor unions that controlled quality and prices. Markets and fairs brought traders from distant lands. Towns became islands of freedom, where runaway serfs could gain their liberty after living there for a year and a day. Justice and law. Justice in feudal times was personal. Lords held courts to settle disputes between their peasants. Trials could be decided by combat or ordeal, like grabbing a hot iron. If your burn healed cleanly, God had proved your innocence. Different courts existed for nobles, commoners, and church matters. The beginning of the end. Feudalism started declining in the 1300s. The Black Death killed millions, creating a labor shortage that gave peasants more bargaining power. The 100 Years' War showed that professional armies were better than feudal knights. Gunpowder made castle walls obsolete. Trade and towns grew, creating new sources of power based on money rather than land. Feudalism's legacy. Though feudalism ended centuries ago, its echoes remain. Many European noble titles survive today. Our notions of chivalry and honor come from medieval knights. Even some modern legal concepts trace back to feudal law. The story of Rome's fall and feudalism's rise teaches us something important. When old systems collapse, people find new ways to organize society. The fall of Rome wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Out of chaos came a new order that would shape Europe for 1,000 years. From the ashes of an ancient empire rose castles and cathedrals, knights and nobles, monks and merchants. The medieval world may seem distant, but its legacy surrounds us. Next time you see a castle or hear words like chivalry and feudal, remember, you're touching a piece of this incredible story. That's how Rome fell, and the medieval world was born. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this historical journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos exploring the fascinating stories of our past.